This is Booked for Drama, where stories burn, hearts break, the tea is always hot and never a part 2. Today we're diving into the substitute who became his regret. Let's go. Chapter 1. The most foolish thing Melissa Barton had ever done was willingly take Daphne's place for her fiancé. Inside the Maybach, her clothes were scattered aside while he remained perfectly dressed, pinning her down as he claimed her fiercely. Melissa bit her lip to stifle my sounds, desperate not to let anything escape. Noticing this, Daniel stilled his movements and signed to her, "Don't hold back." I like to hear. Heat rushed through Melissa's face, spreading to her bones and leaving her weak. She clung to him tighter, and soon, soft, helpless moans slipped from her lips under his relentless pace. The car filled with ragged, uneven breaths. Just as the pleasure was about to crest, a sharp ringtone cut through. Daniel frowned, ready to hang up. But when he saw the caller ID, he turned his back to her and answered. Confused, Melissa watched him. "Daniel, are you even human? Is Melissa with you right now?" An angry voice snapped. He didn't flinch. Calmly, he said, "Say what you want." She can't hear. On the other end, Tommy Moore's fury spiked. "You're unbelievable. Daphne abandoned you once, ditched your engagement, left you at rock bottom, and married someone else overseas. And now, instead of hating her, you're tripping over yourself to take her back?" Melissa blinked in shock. Her hearing wasn't perfect yet, but at this distance, she caught every word. The meaning hit her like a blow. Her mind went blank, her ears buzzing. Unaware of her reaction, Daniel kept his back to her. "This is between me and Daphne. She has depression. I can't let her be a laughingstock. And marrying her won't make you one? What about Melissa? She is Daphne's sister, for God's sake. Even if she loves you enough to give herself to you, that doesn't make it right. She doesn't know better, but you do. She's the one who's been by your side all these years. When your company collapsed, she gave up the Barton family's shares to save you. Without her, you'd have been ruined. Now you're marrying Daphne. What happens to Melissa?" Daniel stayed steady, his voice cool. "I know what I'm doing. Mel is obedient. She spends her days at home, and with her hearing loss, she won't know. Even if Daphne lives with us, Mel won't mind. We'll keep treating her like a little sister." He hung up and turned back to Melissa, as if nothing had happened, and picked up where he had left off. When it was over, tears slipped silently down her face. He kissed them away, carried her back to the villa, and tried to start again in the bedroom until another message popped up on his phone. His expression shifted instantly. He stopped and signed, "There's something urgent at the company. Be good and wait for me here." Melissa bit my lip and nodded, watching him walk out. Alone in the empty room, she felt the cold seep into her bones. Her chest ached with sharp, stabbing pain. For 5 years, she had endured every treatment she could find, hoping to recover her hearing. She dreamt of building a real future with him. However, the first thing she heard when the sound returned was betrayal. She had lost her hearing in a car accident, saving him. But she never regretted it. Melissa had loved Daniel since she was 14, when she sprained her ankle one summer in the countryside. He gave her a ride home on his bike, his white shirt fluttering in the heat. That moment branded itself into her heart. But after the accident, he disappeared for 3 years. When Melissa saw him again, he was already with Daphne. They were inseparable and soon engaged. He loved her so much that he even offered her all of the Zane family's shares as a wedding gift. Then, 5 years ago, just before the wedding, the Zane family went bankrupt. Daphne backed out overnight, left him at his lowest, and married someone else abroad. He fell hard, driven to the edge of a rooftop by creditors. Melissa was the one who pulled him back. She gave up her parents' shares to pay off his debts and help him rise again. Because she resembled Daphne, she even let herself become Daphne's substitute, staying by his side. Melissa was with him through every season, every struggle, and every intimate moment. She believed time could win her his heart. But no matter how many years passed, the moment Daphne came back, he chose her without hesitation. Tears soaked Melissa's pillow. The pain was unbearable, like slamming into a brick wall. For the first time, she regretted it all. She wiped my face, picked up her phone, and dialed an overseas number. "Dad, my hearing is back. I'm ready to accept the marriage you arranged." Chapter 2. On the other end of the line, Gilbert Barton's voice trembled with excitement, testing the waters carefully. "Mel, can you hear me now?" The sound Melissa hadn't heard in so long made her choke up. She gave the faintest hum in response. "Thank God. You finally came around and decided to come back to us? I'll book your ticket overseas right away." "Oh, and didn't you say you had a boyfriend there? Are you bringing him too?" Melissa fought to steady her voice. It had been so long since she had spoken that her words came haltingly. No, we broke up. Good riddance. Grace Blanchard immediately took the phone. Sweetheart, when you come, don't forget to thank Daniel. He's taken care of you for 5 years. You must show your gratitude. The moment Melissa heard Daniel's name, her throat tightened, and a wave of hurt welled up. She had lied to her parents, never telling them that the person she was with was Daniel. If they ever learned she had gotten involved with Daphne's former fiancé, it would crush them. Swallowing the bitterness, she forced herself to agree to Grace's words. When the call ended, she began packing up the villa. Her parents had rushed her visa. It would take 7 days. 7 days were enough to erase every trace of herself from Daniel's life. The place was full of things that screamed, couple, matching mugs, towels, and keepsakes. She boxed them up and tossed them. Every year, he had given her gifts for holidays, treasures she once guarded closely. She threw them away, too. Melissa was so absorbed that she didn't notice when Daniel came home. He walked up quietly, crouched in front of her, and ruffled her hair with the same tenderness as always. Smiling, he signed with his hands. Why are you suddenly packing? Did you hear Daphne's coming back? Melissa opened her mouth, but when she looked at his face, the words stuck. In the end, she only nodded. Good girl. Don't worry about packing. I'll have the maid move everything to your new place. We'll get fresh things here. Tonight is your Daphne's welcome dinner. We'll go together, and afterward, we'll bring her home. Her lips curved into a bitter smile. She couldn't help asking, her voice trembling, when Daphne comes back, will you still love me? Will she find out about us? He took her hand, his tone steady, coaxing. I love you. I would never let you down. But Daphne just got divorced, so her emotions are fragile. Let's keep this quiet for now. We'll tell her later when the time is right. The pain clenched her heart tight. She finally understood. That night, the banquet hall buzzed with people. Knowing Melissa hated noise, he set her in the farthest corner. Meanwhile, he sat front and center beside Daphne, who had just arrived. Everyone knew Melissa couldn't hear. The laughter and banter carried on without restraint. Most of it revolved around Daniel and Daphne's past, teasing them about rekindling their old romance, even tossing out baby names for them. He wrapped an arm around Daphne's waist, smiling as if none of it bothered him. He never once denied it. Later, the crowd suggested the truth or dare game. When Daniel's turn came, he chose truth. One of his friends grinned. I'll ask. Daniel, it's been 5 years. Be honest, did you really get over Daph? Daniel bowed his head, his fingers rubbing the rim of his glass. He was silent for a long moment before finally shaking his head. No, I'll never get over her. Beside him, Daphne's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, I can't get over you either. Whatever had been frozen for 5 years seemed to melt away as they stared at each other, lost in emotion. The room erupted, everyone chanting for them to kiss. Melissa sat like a ghost no one saw, staring at the distant laughter and warmth that had nothing to do with her. Eventually, she felt too tired to sit through it. She picked up her bag and slipped away to the restroom. She had just finished washing her hands when Daphne walked in. In the mirror, 2 faces nearly identical except Melissa's was gentle, Daphne's sharp with confidence. Daphne touched up her lipstick, then smirked. Melissa, I should thank you. 5 years of your care turned Daniel into the perfect man. The Zane family's wealth will be mine, and so will he. Doesn't that burn you? Her eyes flashed with jealousy as she remembered the way Daniel had looked when Melissa left earlier, worried, protective. The thought infuriated her. She grabbed Melissa's chin hard. Oh, I almost forgot you can't hear me. Then let me share a little secret. Daniel is so devoted to me because he believes I saved his life when he was 18. But the truth? It wasn't me, it was you. Still, you were deaf, weren't you? Chapter 3. Tears streamed down Daphne's face as she looked at him in terror. I'm sorry, Daniel. I never should have come back. I knew Mel loved you for a long time, and I shouldn't have tried to take you from her. But I grew up wandering without a home. When I finally returned, my parents' love was hers, the Barton family shares were hers. I had nothing. I never wanted to fight for anything, except you. Don't move. Your ankle's sprained. Daniel carefully lifted her in his arms, his expression full of tenderness. Then, he turned toward Melissa, his face twisted with anger and disappointment she had never seen before. Melissa, I will deal with you for this. Melissa stood frozen. Just moments ago, Daphne had shoved her, and when she stumbled, her palm landed on the sharp edge of a tile. Now her hand was bleeding heavily, pain drilling through her nerves. But none of it hurt as much as the look Daniel gave her before walking away. The welcome dinner ended in disaster. Daniel left with Daphne, and by the time Melissa wrapped her bleeding hand in a napkin and came downstairs, Bryce Joyner, the butler, was already waiting to take her home. She sat quietly in the car, her mind echoing with Daphne's words. For all the years she had been with Daniel, every time she hinted at the past, he always acted as if he already knew. She assumed he did, so she kept quiet. After all, gratitude wasn't the same as love, and saying too much would only make it seem like she was using her kindness as leverage. But she never imagined that all this time, he thought it was Daphne who had saved him. Lost in thought, it took her a while to realize the car wasn't headed toward the villa. Gripping the back of the seat, she panicked. "Bryce, where are we going?" Her words stumbled, and she quickly switched to sign language, but Bryce didn't answer. When the car finally stopped in front of an abandoned building on the outskirts, Bryce stepped out, bowed slightly, and explained. "Mr. Zane instructed you to spend the night here as punishment. He wants you to reflect on your mistakes. I'll pick you up in the morning. He also asked me to remind you, Ms. Daphne is your elder sister. Don't resent her so much. Treat her better." Melissa glanced at the decrepit building bathed in pale moonlight. It radiated an eerie, suffocating dread. Daniel knew she was terrified of the dark and ghosts, yet here she was. Her face turned deathly pale as she shook her head violently. No, but Bryce only followed orders. Once the car disappeared into the distance, her last hope went with it. There was nothing around her but empty fields, distant city lights, and the cold glow of the moon. Melissa didn't dare wander, nor did she have the courage to step into the looming building behind her. Instead, she found a cleaner corner outside, curled up tightly, and tried to make herself small. Her bag and phone were still in the car. Time blurred into an endless stretch. Every rustle of the wind, every whisper of grass made her flinch in terror. She didn't know how long had passed when a sharp pain shot through her ankle. Reaching down, her fingers brushed against something wet and slimy. It was a snake. "Ah!" she screamed, stumbling backward before bolting into the building, limping on her injured leg. The moment she shoved the door open, dim light revealed countless snakes slithering inside, all writhing toward her. "Help! Somebody help me!" Melissa cried, tears streaming down her face as she ran for her life. She kept going until exhaustion took over. A stone caught her foot, sending her crashing to the ground. Pain tore through her as she curled into herself. The darkness closed in, swallowing her whole. She bit down on her hand, letting out a faint, hopeless whimper. Why were they doing this to her? She hadn't done anything wrong. Chapter 4. By the time Melissa finally returned to Zane's residence at sunrise, she was already half out of her mind. Inside, Daniel had just set the breakfast table for Daphne. She sat there beaming, happiness written all over her face. When she noticed Melissa, she quickly stood and reached out, slipping an arm around her. But Melissa flinched violently, trembling all over, and shoved Daphne away like she had been burned. Daniel caught the scene from across the room. His expression darkened with disapproval. "Wasn't last night's punishment enough? Is this really how you've treated Daphne since you were children?" Biting her lip, Melissa staggered forward and grabbed his sleeve, desperate to drag him upstairs. She had to tell him everything Daphne had said. Daniel's brows knitted together as he took in her torn, filthy clothes and pale face. His eyes flickered with disdain, but his voice softened despite himself. "There's no need to go this far just to play the victim. It was a simple lesson, nothing more. No one laid a hand on you. Now apologize to Daphne." When he refused to follow her, Melissa fumbled for her phone and showed him the message she had typed on the way back. Daniel didn't even glance at the screen. Irritated, he slapped the phone from her hand, sending it crashing to the floor. "Melissa, enough." She crouched there, staring at the shattered phone. All the fear and grief bottled up through the night finally spilled over. Huge tears slid down her face, hitting the marble one after another. His chest tightened. He bent down, reaching to help her up just as Daphne slipped her hand into his. "Daniel, no matter what she's done, she is still my little sister. I don't blame her. Please, don't be too hard on her." His jaw clenched, his breath heavy with frustration. "I've spoiled her too long. That princess temper of hers should have been reined in years ago. If I had known it was Melissa who schemed to send you away, I never would have kept her under my roof all these years." Daphne leaned closer, voice soft and gentle. "It doesn't matter, as long as I have you." The two of them walked off together, leaving Melissa behind. She gave a bitter laugh as she picked up the broken pieces of her phone. So this was how Daphne had won him over during those years she had been deaf, whispering lies into his ear until he believed them. And he had chosen to believe her, not Melissa. Bryce came in to clear the mess. Ms. Barton, Mr. Zane does care about you. He prepared breakfast, your favorite dishes are on the table. As for Ms. Daphne, her mind is fragile. That's why he pays her more attention. She is your sister. Please, try to be understanding. Melissa wiped her tears away and forced herself to stand tall. Her voice was steady. I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I be the one to understand? She sent her phone for repairs. During those days of waiting, Daniel never once came home. When she finally got it back, she opened her social feed and saw post after post from Daphne. There were pictures of her and Daniel traveling together. Every place they visited was somewhere Melissa had once begged him to take her. Every time, he had told her he was too busy with work. But now, he had dropped everything to go with Daphne. Love and indifference were all too clear. That night, Melissa typed a message to Daniel. She told him the truth that the person who saved him back in San Francisco was her, not Daphne. Hours passed before his reply finally arrived. Come here, we'll talk face to face. Chapter 5. The next day, Melissa showed up at the meeting spot as agreed, but before she could see anyone, a hand clamped tightly over her mouth and nose. A strange chemical scent rushed into her lungs, and her body went limp as darkness swallowed her. When she came to, she was lying at the edge of a cliff she didn't recognize. Standing before her was Daphne. Melissa struggled to her feet. After days of practice, her speech was finally steady enough. Daphne, what are you trying to do? Daphne smiled sweetly as she reached out to stroke Melissa's face. So you really did hear me that day. Your hearing came back quickly. But what does it matter if you know? You've got no proof, and Daniel will never believe you. No matter what you say, you'll always be beneath me. Her gaze flicked toward the cliff's edge, and then, with a triumphant smile, she fell backward into the abyss. Melissa's heart lurched. She hadn't expected this at all. In a panic, she reached out to grab Daphne, but she was too late. A rough hand yanked her back. The next second, a sharp slap exploded across her face. Her ears rang, her cheek burned. Melissa, what have you done? How could you be so vicious? Daphne's mental state is fragile, and this is how you treat her. Even if you, like me, do your jealousy run so deep that you would risk her life? I'm already with you, so why can't you leave Daphne alone? The roar in her ear pierced straight through her chest. Melissa's eyes widened in shock. She never thought Daniel would strike her. In all their years together, he might have been cold, but he had never once raised his hand. Her eyes filled with tears. She stared at him as if he were a stranger. I didn't push her. She jumped on her own. Even if she jumped, it's because you drove her to it. Daniel's hand clamped around her throat, his reason slipping further with every word. Daniel, how can you think of me? I never hurt her. Back in San Francisco, it was me you met. It was I who saved you. That accident cost me my hearing. Daphne's marriage abroad was her own choice. For 2 fleeting seconds, his grip slackened. A spark of hope flickered in Melissa's eyes. After 5 years at his side, surely, he would trust her. Lies. His gaze turned icy again. His fingers tightened like a vice. Don't forget, Melissa, you're just a stand-in. Even if everything you say is true, you'll never replace her. If you keep stalling and Daphne really gets hurt, I'll make sure you pay with your life. She collapsed to the ground, clutching her throat, coughing so hard her tears spilled out with each ragged breath. Daniel didn't even look back before hurling himself over the cliff in pursuit of Daphne. Melissa's vision dimmed, her trembling fingers dialed the police, then fell limply against the earth. Agonizing pain knifed through her chest. For Daphne, Daniel's faith was blind and absolute. He would risk everything, his love, his reason, even his life. And she? She had never been anything more than a substitute. The warmth she once thought was real, the affection she believed she had earned, it was only because she happened to wear Daphne's face. Her strength finally gave out, and she lost consciousness. When she awoke again, she was lying on an operating table. Harsh white lights blinded her, and she felt the cold slice of a scalpel cutting into her ear. The cochlear implant she had just received was being torn out. Chapter 6. When Melissa's mind cleared, she finally saw Daniel standing nearby in protective gear. The moment he noticed she was awake, he stepped closer, his eyes filled with a pity she had never once seen in him. He signed with his hands, Mel, I'm sorry. I know you just got your hearing back, but after Daphne fell into the lake, her eardrum got infected. She needs the implant more than you do. I can't risk losing her. Don't be afraid. I'll make sure you get the best hearing aids in the world. The anesthesia dulled her, but the pain was still sharp, digging into her nerves. Melissa gave a bitter smile, and tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. Her chest hurt so much that it made the pain in her ears feel insignificant by comparison. Because of her unique condition and the wrong medication she had been given after losing her hearing years ago, ordinary cochlear implants had never worked for her. Hearing aids were useless, too. For 5 years, despite her fear of pain, she had endured countless surgeries and swallowed mountains of pills, until she finally found one implant that her body didn't reject. And now, with just a few words from Daniel, all of it had been destroyed. The next few days, perhaps out of guilt, Daniel looked after her with meticulous care. Melissa never once met his eyes. She simply sat quietly on the hospital bed while outside, the cicadas droned endlessly in the heavy summer heat. To her, it was like the world had been shut behind a wall of silence. She didn't notice the door opening until Daphne appeared in front of her. Dressed in a blazing red dress, she smiled with malicious pride, twirling a glass vial in her hand. Inside it was unmistakably Melissa's implant. She strolled to the window and tossed the vial out with disgust. Melissa bolted from the bed in panic, just in time to see a flock of birds swoop down and carry the implant away. Her vision blurred with rage and despair. She steadied herself, then lifted her hand and slapped Daphne across the face hard. It wasn't enough. She raised her hand again, but before she could strike, a larger hand seized her wrist and shoved her back against the window ledge. As she expected, the moment she lifted her eyes, Daniel was there, staring at her with cold condemnation. She couldn't hear, but it wasn't hard to guess the lies Daphne was spinning this time, lies he believed without question. "Kneel down. Apologize to Daphne." Melissa didn't even bother responding in sign. She turned to leave, but before she could, 2 bodyguards rushed in and pinned her down. Pain shot through her legs, and in the next moment, she was forced to kneel at Daniel's feet. He frowned, anger barely contained in his eyes. "You've got nothing to explain? I'm the one who gave your implant to Daphne. What right do you have to be angry? You know better than anyone what it's like to lose your hearing. What's wrong with letting her have it? She suffered so much because of you overseas. This is your debt to her." Melissa's eyes burned red, but she stubbornly held back her tears. Her silence only enraged him further. "Still so defiant? As your guardian, it seems I need to teach you a proper lesson." He ordered the bodyguards to pin her harder while he gently took Daphne's wrist, his expression softening instantly as he looked at her with tender affection. "Daph, I'll make sure you get that back 100-fold for the slap you received just now." The first slap landed, leaving a stinging mark on Melissa's face. Then came the second, the third. When Daphne's hand grew sore, the bodyguards continued in her place. It wasn't until the 99th slap landed that Daniel finally ordered them to stop. Melissa had been raised pampered and delicate. He never expected she would endure so long without breaking, without begging for mercy, without surrendering. So all her years of gentleness had been nothing but an act. Fury twisted in Daniel's chest as he led Daphne proudly out of the ward. The moment they left, Melissa collapsed onto the floor, drained of strength. Her cheeks burned numb from the blows, but what hurt most was her heart. It was as if a rusted blade was carved into it again and again. This was the man she had loved for nearly 10 years. How ridiculous. It felt like she was only meeting his true face for the first time today. He was no longer the boy in the white shirt she remembered, and she had no reason to love him anymore. Chapter 7. Melissa was discharged from the hospital earlier than expected. When she arrived at the villa, the once familiar courtyard had been completely transformed. The garden was filled with flowers Daphne adored, and the walls were plastered with wedding decorations. Her own belongings, however, were being tossed into the fire one by Daphne. Melissa stood frozen, watching in silence. Then, Daphne pulled out a pink diary, its cover already yellowed with age, waving it around proudly like a prize. Melissa's fingers trembled. She had kept a diary for as long as she could remember, and this one held every teenage confession she had written at 14 about Daniel, the girlish heart she had hidden away. But she had lost this diary years ago. How was it in Daphne's hands? In that instant, everything became clear. It was through this diary that Daphne discovered her feelings for Daniel and used that knowledge to take her place. What Melissa couldn't understand was why her biological sister hated her so much. With a tilt of her head, Daphne tossed the diary straight into the flames. Daniel's voice suddenly cut through the air behind her. "Daph, why would you throw that away? Isn't it a piece of our memories?" For a split second, Daphne's expression faltered. She quickly masked it and slipped her arm through his. "That's all in the past, Daniel. Marrying you is a brand new life for me. I don't want anything from before." Daniel frowned slightly. He had already sensed something off between Melissa and Daphne just moments ago, but her words left little room for doubt. He sighed helplessly and pulled her gently into his arms. All right, if it's in the past, let it stay there. To anyone watching, Daniel looked utterly devoted to Daphne. Tilting her head against his chest, Daphne gazed up at him with a radiant smile. Daniel, I don't have any friends here. But Melissa is still my sister. Couldn't she be my bridesmaid tomorrow? Daniel's eyes instinctively flicked toward Melissa. He wanted to refuse, but remembering Daphne's fragile health, he relented. Using sign language, he asked Melissa. He had expected her to lash out, but she only nodded calmly. That unsettled him. It's fine, he told himself. He would explain afterward and coax her properly. But Melissa felt nothing anymore. Daphne's request was nothing but another humiliation. Even if she refused, Daniel would find a way to force her into it. She had a flight booked for the next evening, so there was no reason to argue. On the day of the wedding, Daniel hosted a grand banquet. For the past 5 years, plenty of people in their circle had known about Melissa's relationship with him. And now, he is marrying Daphne. Melissa couldn't hear the whispers, but she wasn't blind. The sidelong glances, sharp with judgment, cut her open piece by piece, branding her filthy and shameful. Her fingers clenched tightly. Soon, she would be gone from here. She numbly went about serving guests until Daniel's bodyguards suddenly seized her. They dragged her into a storage room, where Daniel, eyes bloodshot, grabbed her collar. Where did you take Daph? I told you she struggles with depression. Today's wedding was just for show. But because of your jealousy, you arranged for someone to abduct her last night to threaten me, didn't you? So that's why you agreed to be her bridesmaid. Melissa, how could you be so vicious? I'll ask you one last time, where is she? His fury terrified her, her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She hadn't touched Daphne. She couldn't have, even if she wanted to. She explained as much, but Daniel refused to believe her. You still won't talk, huh? His voice turned colder. Men. Several bodyguards stepped forward. Their rough hands gripped her arms, yanking at her dress, fabric tearing under their strength. Melissa screamed and struggled, but she was no match for them. Her nails bent backward as she clawed desperately at her clothing, blood pouring instantly from the torn skin. She had always been terrified of pain. When she sprained her ankle at 14, she had cried so hard that Daniel had teased her for being delicate. Even in their 5 years together, he had shielded her from chores, covered sharp table corners with padding so she wouldn't get hurt, and quietly cared for her every fear of pain. But now, with Daphne back, none of that mattered anymore. What she never imagined was that, for Daphne's sake, he would let other men violate her like this. Once, he couldn't even stand another man glancing her way. He would fire them on the spot, seething with jealousy. That night, his possessiveness had been overwhelming. He held her so tightly it was as if he wanted to fuse her into his very bones. And now, as the last shred of fabric slipped from her body. Chapter 8. Tell me where she is. Daniel raised his hand to halt them. A chill settled deep in Melissa's chest. No matter what she said, he would never believe her. The 5 years they had spent side by side now felt like nothing more than a cruel joke. She let out a shaky laugh, but tears blurred her vision. Her answer hadn't changed from the very beginning. She didn't know. Daniel's jaw tightened, fury twisting his face until reason slipped away. Bring in some snakes. She's terrified of them. We'll see how long it takes before she talks. He was too anxious about Daphne's safety to waste another second on Melissa. Grabbing his coat, he stormed out of the storage room. A few snakes were tossed inside. For a bitter second, Melissa almost laughed. So this was his version of mercy. She lay flat on the icy floor, shutting her eyes as memories flickered through her mind. They dissolved the moment something cool and suffocating wrapped around her wrist. The moment Melissa got a clear look at the snake, she jolted upright in terror. Daniel had arranged for venomous snakes. The scent of blood on her body was already luring them closer. She fought with every ounce of strength she had, managing to kill several, but not before sharp fangs sank deep into her arm. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was Daniel kicking the door open, rushing toward her with panic in his eyes. When she woke again, she was bound in an abandoned warehouse. The ropes cut into her skin, wounds so tight she could hardly breathe. Across from her, Daphne sat trembling in Daniel's arms, her clothes disheveled, sobbing like a wounded bird. Melissa's head felt unbearably heavy. Through the haze, she saw Daniel's lips moving words that sounded like a death sentence. The ropes tightened, scraping her skin raw. Agonizing pain shot through her as her body was hauled into the air. Daniel gave her one last, icy glance before carrying Daphne out in his arms without a backward look. As for Daphne, she tilted her head and smiled at Melissa. It was a smile full of meaning. Melissa had no idea how long had passed. Suddenly, the pitch-dark warehouse lit up. For a split second, she thought they had returned. But to her horror, the flames spread quickly, heat surging through the air. Only then did she catch the sharp stench of gasoline lingering around her. They actually meant to burn her alive. Her survival instincts exploded. She thrashed, fought, and pulled until her wrists bled. But the ropes wouldn't give. She screamed, but no one came. Tears streamed down her face, only to dry almost instantly in the searing heat. Her chest tightened with despair. The worst mistake of her life was falling in love with Daniel. She regretted it with every fiber of her being. Her parents were still waiting for her overseas. She couldn't accept her fate by dying like this. Chapter 9. Daniel carried Daphne back to the villa. He never imagined Melissa would go so far as to hurt Daphne for his sake. He knew Melissa's feelings for him ran deep, but Daphne had once saved his life. After Daphne returned home, doctors diagnosed her with a mental illness and said she was highly suicidal. Out of gratitude, he couldn't stand by and watch her die. The doctors warned him to indulge her, to give her extra care and attention. That was why, when Daphne kept asking for a wedding, he finally agreed. The ceremony was rushed. Daniel had planned to get it done before Melissa was discharged, the same way he had secretly registered his marriage with Daphne. He hadn't expected Melissa to leave the hospital early. That was his mistake. He wanted to explain everything to Melissa. But the night before the wedding, Daphne clung to him all evening. Then, she vanished the next day, and he was too afraid something would happen to her to think clearly. Now he knelt by the bed, carefully applying ointment to the raw marks circling Daphne's wrists. As he stared at the wounds, his mind drifted. Melissa came to him instead. She had always been delicate, her skin so soft that even a light squeeze left a red mark. He wondered if being tied up all night had left her in agony. The thought made him despise himself. No matter how cruel or reckless Melissa had been, no matter the mistakes she made, he still cared. He even felt a reckless urge to order her release. But then he remembered her stubborn defiance, and anger surged back. Forget it, maybe this will finally teach her to stop targeting Daphne, he thought. What are you thinking about, Daniel? Daphne's voice broke in as she leaned closer, her collar slipping low enough to reveal a tempting glimpse of skin. He averted his gaze without a flicker of expression. I was thinking about how today's wedding was ruined, and when we should reschedule it. No need, Daniel. Her tone carried a hint of grievance. Just being alive and able to see you today already makes me happy. I'm more worried about how Mel will handle all this. Don't be afraid. I'll take care of everything. Daphne threw herself into his arms with a soft sigh. Daniel, I'm so lucky to have you. After a while, she reached up to undo his shirt buttons, her voice syrupy sweet. Daniel, even if the ceremony didn't happen, tonight is still our wedding night. The invitation in her words was obvious. Daniel shot to his feet and stepped away. Realizing his reaction was too sharp, he softened his tone quickly. Be good. You've been through a shock today, and your wrists are injured. You need rest. His right eyelid twitched violently. For some reason, a heavy sense of dread rose in his chest stronger than he had ever felt before. He soothed Daphne for a bit longer, then left the room and immediately asked for news about Melissa. He had stationed men outside the warehouse. While he waited, he stood on the villa's balcony, staring into the distance. Somewhere far off, flames lit up the sky, staining half of it orange-red. He waited what felt like forever before a bodyguard rushed in, pale and sweating. Bad news, Mr. Zane, the man stammered. The warehouse where Ms. Barton was being held on fire. Chapter 10. What did you say? Daniel turned around, a sudden chill enveloping him. The bodyguard was so intimidated by Daniel's presence that he didn't dare to breathe. His knees trembled uncontrollably, but he still repeated himself under the pressure. Daniel's heart was beating faster than ever before. Before his mind could make a decision, his body had already rushed out. On the way, Daniel moved at the fastest speed of his life. He floored the accelerator, staring through the car window at the sky stained red, his hands on the steering wheel shaking uncontrollably. Melissa, you must be safe. By the time he finally arrived at the destination, firefighters had already cordoned off the scene. The summer was dry, and with the warehouse at the center, the fire had spread hundreds of meters into the forest. The warehouse had long since become a pile of ruins. Waves of heat assaulted him, but Daniel charged toward the cordon without hesitation. The staff stopped him. Sir, it's very dangerous inside. You can't go in. Daniel's eyes saw only the warehouse still burning. And Melissa, whom he had personally tied up inside not long ago. Daniel's eyes were red. What about the people inside? Did you get anyone out of the warehouse? No trap personnel have been found so far, sir. Please stay calm and cooperate with our work. The bodyguard responsible for watching the warehouse arrived late, reeking of alcohol, and knelt before Daniel. Didn't I tell you to stay and guard the warehouse? Where are the people? Where did I go? It was Ms. Daphne who said we could take a break. Daniel clenched his fists, veins bulging on the back of his hand. He closed his eyes, suppressing his anger. Mobilize all the rescue teams in the city. Put out the fire. Summer wildfires were hard to extinguish. This one burned until dawn before it was finally subdued. Disheveled and filthy, Daniel rushed into the ruins of the warehouse. He used both hands and feet to clear away the debris piece by piece. But the warehouse was so badly damaged that, aside from a few pieces of sheet metal and ashes, there was nothing else left. Daniel knelt on the ground, stubbornly sifting through the ashes, large tears rolling down his face, his voice hoarse. Mel, don't scare me. You're going to be fine, aren't you? Mel, don't joke with me. I was wrong. I shouldn't have left you here alone. Mel, please, come out. As long as you come out, I'll do anything you want. Didn't you always want to go out and have fun? I'll go with you. The assistant came forward to report, Mr. Zane, the rescue team didn't find any trapped people nearby, and our people haven't found any trace of Ms. Melissa. The fire was too intense last night. With the way Ms. Melissa was trapped, it would have been nearly impossible to escape. I'm afraid, there's nothing left of her. Impossible. Daniel's eyes were bloodshot. She must still be alive. Even if she's dead, I want to see her body. Mr. Zane, there seems to be a piece of bone here. Another bodyguard called out from the other side. Hearing this, Daniel scrambled over in a panic. A small segment of bone, mixed with black ash, lay on the ground. Daniel's hands trembled as he tried several times before finally picking up the bone and placing it in his palm. It felt as if a giant hand was tearing his heart apart. No, this can't be Mel. But the appearance of a small fragment of bone in the abandoned warehouse was already the best answer. Daniel carefully cradled the piece of bone in his palm, slowly pressing it to his cheek. As if, in this way, he could still feel Melissa's warmth. She was someone so afraid of pain. Daniel couldn't bear to imagine how much she must have suffered last night. A bitter taste rose in Daniel's throat. Suddenly, he vomited blood and collapsed, fainting. Chapter 11. Daniel had a dream. In the dream, he returned to those dark days when the Zane family went bankrupt. He jumped to their deaths, and his fiancée married someone else. Debt collectors came one after another, wave after wave. But he couldn't afford the astronomical compensation. Dragging his heavy steps, he climbed to the rooftop, preparing to follow in his parents' footsteps. Just as he closed his eyes, ready to end it all, a pair of soft, warm hands grabbed his wrist. That face, at a glance, bore a striking resemblance to his fiancée Daphne. But my parents, upon closer look, this face was gentle and pure, appearing especially delicate and timid, yet her actions were utterly unconventional. She used all the shares she owned to pay off his debts. She even said she was willing to be her sister's substitute and stay by his side. Melissa's gentle warmth was like sunlight suddenly breaking through the darkness, and he couldn't bear to let her go. He had never regarded Melissa as a mere substitute. Knowing she couldn't hear, he sought out professionals to learn sign language. As they spent more time together, his heart inevitably began to waver. But Melissa was too obedient, and he was rational. He didn't want to touch her, always restraining himself with great effort. Until that night, when his company secured an important project, and Melissa put something in his drink. After a reckless night, he felt both delighted and guilty. He numbed himself countless times, telling himself that Melissa was willing, that she loved him, liked him, and that she was happy to have this. So he let things continue as they were, and in a flash, 5 years had passed. Unknowingly, Melissa had become the most important person in his life, someone closer than family despite having no blood relation. Every time he looked back, the girl's clear, pure eyes would curve into crescents, gazing at him intently. But this time, what he saw was Melissa hanging in the center of the darkness. A sudden fire engulfed her, leaving only her screams behind. He turned around, and a bloodied, fragile, helpless face, with tears in her eyes, softly called out to him, "Daniel, it hurts so much. Please save me." Daniel woke up with a start. Cold sweat mixed with tears slid down his forehead. He got out of bed and searched everywhere for Melissa. The hospital room door opened. Daphne had just come in carrying a thermos when Daniel grabbed her arm and demanded, "Where is Melissa?" Daphne winced in pain, frowning slightly. Neil, you're hurting me. Melissa is dead. Dead? Daniel staggered, his eyes vacant. It wasn't a dream. Scenes from that night flashed through his mind. It was all real. The warehouse fire, and all that was left of Melissa were her bones. How could she be dead? Daniel's eyes were wet, and even now he refused to accept the truth. Looking at Daphne in front of him, he suddenly remembered something, his gaze turning icy. Why did you let the people guarding the warehouse leave? Daphne bit her lip, her face full of guilt, and recited the explanation she had prepared. I'm sorry, Neil. I didn't know they were people you had left there. They were outside, and I thought you had left someone in the warehouse, so I let them go first. Melissa is my sister. I never wanted to really hurt her. I thought that after I left with you, you would arrange for someone to let Mel down. Tears welled up in Daphne's eyes, her face full of innocence. Most of the suspicion in Daniel's eyes faded, replaced by deep self-reproach. Yes, it was his fault. He had always been soft-hearted, never truly harsh with Melissa. Except for the last 2 times, when Melissa was too rebellious and refused to give in, and he confronted her out of spite. Before that, he would have just put on a show in front of Daphne. Daniel's heart ached sharply. He shouldn't have. He was the one who killed Melissa. Daniel slapped himself hard. Daphne hurriedly grabbed Daniel's hand. Neil, what are you doing? What happened to Mel is something none of us wanted. If anyone is to blame, blame me. I hadn't insisted on being with you, none of this would have happened. Someone like me, who only drags others down and is always despised, should have died instead of Melissa. Daniel no longer had the energy to comfort Daphne. Don't say that, Mr. Zane. The assistant entered with a stack of documents. Our people found gasoline residue at the scene of Ms. Melissa's accident. Chapter 12. How could there be gasoline in an abandoned warehouse? Daphne spoke up first. Neil, the warehouse is where my sister kidnapped me. Does that mean she wanted to kill me? Daniel immediately denied it. Mel is timid, she wouldn't do that. His expression grew serious as he looked up at his assistant. Go investigate. Daphne's expression became unnatural for a moment, as if she wanted to say something. But Daniel only left a quick instruction to help him with the discharge paperwork before rushing out of the hospital. Daniel drove straight home. His single-family villa was the place he and Melissa had chosen together after he started making money. He thought Melissa was probably upset with him and deliberately avoiding him. As long as he came home after work, he would see her curled up on the sofa waiting for him, just like always. But when he arrived, he realized the once familiar villa suddenly felt strange. There were no more jasmine flowers in the garden, which Melissa loved. Instead, colorful balloons and large red wedding symbols were hung everywhere. Inside, all the decorations Melissa had carefully chosen had been replaced, and the layout was completely different. Daniel staggered upstairs. The door to the bedroom he shared with Melissa was open, and he heard rustling sounds coming from inside. Daniel's eyes lit up with surprise. He tried to calm his wildly beating heart, straightened his collar, and strode into the room. But Melissa was not there as he had hoped. Instead, 2 servants were hanging a huge wedding photo of him and Daphne on the wall. Who gave you permission to touch these things? The people in the room were startled by his sudden outburst. Bryce was the first to react and stepped forward. Mr. Zane, you said Mrs. Zane could redecorate the villa as she wished, and that we should follow her instructions. Mrs. Zane? Daniel suddenly remembered that he had indeed said those words the day Daphne moved into the villa. A wave of frustration welled up in his chest. Where are Mel's things? Restore the villa to its original state by the end of today. And didn't I warn you not to mention my relationship with her sister in front of Mel? But, the servant's attempt to argue was quickly stopped by Bryce. Mr. Zane, it's my fault for not supervising properly. The photo was moved in yesterday at Ms. Daphne's request. As for Ms. Melissa's belongings, Ms. Daphne threw them all into the fire a couple of days ago. Only a diary she hid in her desk remains. Bryce found the diary and handed it to Daniel. Daniel flipped through a couple of pages, and as he read the contents, he turned and went to the study. After he left, the servants whispered, "Sir even invited Ms. Melissa to the wedding." What could he possibly be afraid of Ms. Melissa finding out? Ms. Melissa is such a good person. She doesn't seem at all like what her sister says about her. Bryce glanced at them. No need to say more. Time will reveal the truth. He had noticed Melissa's discarded diary in the trash pile and, out of personal interest, picked it up. In the study, Daniel held Melissa's handwritten diary as if it were a treasure, turning the pages one by one. The entries began 5 years ago. June 9, 2020. I finally tricked my parents into giving me shares of the Barton family. Now I can help him. June 10, 2020. Today was so dangerous. Luckily, I ran fast and he wasn't hurt. Seeing him up close, he's really so handsome. My heart flutters and aches for him. Being able to stay by his side feels like a dream come true. The diary entries from the following years were scattered records of all the little things in her life. But without exception, they were all related to him. Daniel hadn't expected that even the gifts he casually gave Melissa were enough to make her happy and worth recording. During the rest of his working hours, the thing Melissa wrote most often in her diary every day was that she missed him. Daniel read from day to night, from 2020 slowly up to the present. July 24, 2025. Today's surgery was a success. I can finally hear again. I wanted to surprise him, but instead I heard that he and Daphne got their marriage certificate. So after all this time, he still doesn't love me. If that's the case, then goodbye, Daniel. July 26, 2025. There were so many snakes last night. It was so dark. I was so scared. Why did he punish me like this? I didn't push her, but he doesn't believe me. I really want to tell him what she said, but he won't listen to me. It's okay. Once my phone is fixed, I'll send him a message. Everything should get better, right? July 31, 2025. This is my last diary entry. So much has happened these past few days, but there doesn't seem to be much worth writing. He's not important anymore. Leaving. Daniel's fingertips brushed over the last two words, and the force of the pen piercing the paper made him almost feel the writer's determination. It felt as if a pair of hands were tightly gripping his heart, making it hard for him to breathe from the pain. He did trust her. But he had been too impatient. What was Mel trying to tell him that day? Daniel took a long time to compose himself. When he looked up again, his eyes hidden in the moonlight were shadowed and dark. For the first time, he dialed a phone number. Help me look into Daphne, especially what happened in San Francisco around 2017. Chapter 13. On the other side of the world, in a picturesque small town abroad. Melissa finally woke up after being in a coma for 3 days in the hospital. As soon as she opened her eyes, her parents, who had been keeping vigil by her bedside, immediately rushed over. Their faces, now much more aged, were filled with worry, and tears shimmered in their eyes. Gilbert skillfully signed, "Sweetheart, you finally woke up. You nearly scared your mom and dad to death, do you know that? Tell me quickly, what happened to you? Who hurt you?" Grace stood silently by, her gaze sweeping over the half of Melissa's body where the skin was badly burned, the faint swelling on her cheek, and the unhealed knife scar on her ear. Tears streamed down her face from the pain she felt for her daughter. Melissa had never expected that she would live to see her parents again. That day, in the abandoned warehouse. Perhaps it was heaven's mercy, the fire first burned through the ropes that bound her. She fell down, and half of her body was burned by the flames on the ground. Ignoring the pain, her will to survive made her struggle to her feet, using the fire to burn through the ropes around her wrists. Step by step, she fought against the wind and escaped from the abandoned warehouse. Because she had already planned to leave, her luggage had long been stored at the hotel. The only thought left in her mind was to get away. To leave New York, to leave Daniel. She changed into long sleeves and pants, took a taxi to the airport in the middle of the night, and caught the flight she had booked. All the way, her body ached terribly. It was only her last bit of willpower that allowed her to make it to where her parents were. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. The self-protective shell she had clung to these past days gently cracked, collapsing completely in front of Gilbert and Grace. Melissa forced a smile, raised her less injured hand and waved, signaling that she was all right. This was the path she had chosen herself. Now that everything was over and she had escaped, she shouldn't let them worry about her any longer. Seeing that Gilbert and Grace still didn't believe her, Melissa's eyes flickered as she struggled to come up with an explanation. "I ran into a gang of kidnappers on my way here, but it's all been taken care of." Melissa thought she had managed to fool them, but after spending some time with her, both Gilbert and Grace felt something was off. Even if she had encountered kidnappers, it was impossible for Melissa to come to them covered in injuries like this. Gilbert and Grace exchanged a glance. Gilbert spoke first. "Should we ask Daniel about what happened to Mel? Back when Mel chose to stay in New York, we've asked him to look after her these past few years. He knows better than we do what happened to Mel." Grace was displeased. "Forget it, let's not trouble him. Things didn't work out between our families back then. He's still an outsider, after all. We'd be better off asking Chandler for help. Chandler is truly family to us." Gilbert snorted. "How can we just let it go? Back then, because of Daph, our family gave all our shares to the Zane family. What do we owe him? If he hadn't begged me, I wouldn't have agreed. Oh, come on, you know Mel once had feelings for that Zane boy. Why bring this up now? Listen to me. Ignoring Grace's objections, Gilbert found Daniel's number in his contacts and dialed. No one answered the call for a long time. Gilbert called 2 more times, but got the same result. Just as he was about to give up, that number called back. The call connected, but on the other end came a coquettish female voice. Dad, long time no see. Chapter 14. Why is it you? Upon hearing Daphne's voice, Gilbert instinctively furrowed his brows. Surprised? Your beloved Melissa is already dead. From now on, don't call to disturb the life Neil and I have together. Daphne hung up the phone directly, blocked and deleted the number, making sure there was no contact information for anyone from the Barton family left on Daniel's phone. She had finally gotten everything she wanted. Daphne. A deep, cold voice sounded behind her. Daphne turned around, the smile still lingering on her lips, and upon seeing who it was, she instinctively wanted to go to him. Unexpectedly, what greeted her first was Daniel's hand locked around her neck. Daniel tightened his grip, his eyes dark and menacing, and threw the documents in his other hand onto the floor. You arranged for people to carry out the kidnapping on the wedding day, and on the day of the cliff accident, you used my phone to message Melissa and lure her to the mountaintop. Your cochlear implant was never infected at all. And, when you were 17, you had plastic surgery to copy Melissa's face, didn't you? Because she was suffocating, Daphne's face quickly turned red and purple. Her gaze swept over the pile of discarded papers on the ground, and instead of panic, there was a knowing smile in her eyes. I didn't expect you to find out so quickly. Mr. Zane, impressive methods. Daphne was certain that she had covered her tracks perfectly in San Francisco all those years ago. There was no way Daniel could have found out. Relying on the fact that she had once saved his life, she was sure that even if Daniel discovered she had bullied Melissa during this time, he wouldn't really do anything to her. She pried Daniel's fingers off one by one, laughing with a hint of madness. But I love you too much, Daniel. I've liked you for 10 years, loved you so much I could die for you. And I hate Melissa so much. She took everything from me, and all of you liked her. What was so good about her? Daniel's eyes were icy cold. So you arranged for someone to pour gasoline in the warehouse and tried to burn her alive. That's right, I couldn't wait for her to die. Getting a definite answer from Daphne, the bloodshot in Daniel's eyes grew even darker. Daphne, stop deceiving yourself. You never loved me. What you love is power and wealth. When the Zane family went bankrupt, you were unwilling to fulfill our engagement. After a big fight at the Barton family, you ran off abroad overnight and married someone else. Unfortunately, the person you married was terrible, not only cheating but also abusing you. When you heard I had made a comeback in America, you went to great lengths to get a divorce and pinned the blame for your departure on Mel. You took advantage of Melissa's inability to hear, said all sorts of bad things about her in front of me, and I actually believed your lies. Since you say you love me enough to die for me, I want to see just how far you'll go. Guards. A flash of panic appeared in Daphne's eyes. Do you want to send me to prison or kill me? Daniel, don't forget that I'm your legal wife now. Melissa is already dead, you only have me, and the Barton family has only me left as a daughter. Hey, Daniel coldly ordered the bodyguards, break one of her legs first, then throw her into the basement. Make her suffer everything Mel went through. The bodyguard approached Daphne, carrying a steel rod. Daphne couldn't believe Daniel would really hurt her. Daniel, I saved your life before. Is this how you treat me? Life? After what you did to Mel, you think you deserve to bring up the past? Daniel raised his finger slightly. Daphne's screams echoed throughout the villa. Daphne's face was deathly pale, and the intense pain caused her to collapse to the ground. How was this so different from what she had expected? She looked at Daniel in shock, unable to believe that someone who had treated her so well just days ago could suddenly change so completely. For Melissa's sake, Daniel had really broken her leg. Daniel, if you're going to hurt me like this, you might as well let me die. Daniel looked up, his eyes devoid of any former warmth, and spoke each word as if from the depths of hell. Letting you die would be too easy. I will make you wish you were dead. Chapter 15. Daphne finally realized something was wrong and began to beg for mercy. Neil, didn't you say you couldn't let me go, that you loved me the most? You said I was your only wife, you said you would treat me well. Melissa treated me like that before, and even if she's dead, shouldn't you be happy for me? Daniel stared at her in silence, his expression making it clear that he truly wanted to torment her to death. Daphne stared intently into Daniel's eyes, suddenly realizing something. You've fallen for that bitch, haven't you? Mel is my beloved. Daniel's voice was especially gentle when he mentioned Melissa. You shouldn't have touched her. Daphne felt as if all the strength had been drained from her body. She broke down. Why, was all your kindness to me just an act? Daniel, I saved your life. We are married, you can't treat me like this. Gratitude is not love. Anyone who hurts Mel must pay the price. Daphne, I've repaid you enough. No, don't. Daphne was dragged all the way to the basement by the bodyguards. Thrown in with her were dozens of venomous snakes. Seeing the snakes flicking their tongues, Daphne, dragging her broken leg, retreated in terror. But now she could barely move far. Several snakes had already slithered quickly to her feet. Daniel, let me out. I know I was wrong. Let me out. Even if your recent kindness to me was fake, are you going to ignore the feelings we had 5 years ago? Ah, get away. Daniel, it doesn't matter even if you know everything. Melissa is dead, ha ha ha. From time to time, Daphne's cries for help echoed from the basement, but under Daniel's orders, no one dared to respond. In the living room, Daniel held Melissa's urn in his arms, his hand gently caressing it, his gaze filled with longing and affection. Beside him were the documents about Daphne that he had asked Tommy to investigate. Apart from truly having depression, everything else about Daphne, including her identity as the Barton family's daughter, was a lie. Years ago, Daphne's parents died in a car accident. After her face was disfigured, she underwent plastic surgery and happened to end up looking similar to Melissa. The Barton family parents happened to meet this girl, saw that she was pitiful and looked like Melissa, so they took her in as an adopted daughter, keeping her by their side as a companion for Melissa. The Barton family treated Daphne very well, publicly claiming she was their long-lost biological daughter, treating her as their own, with no sign of favoritism. Tommy had not been able to find out whether the person who saved him back then was Daphne or Melissa. Even if it was Daphne who saved him, he had already repaid her kindness enough. Back then, he had agreed to be with her, even arranged a marriage contract with the Zane family, but it was Daphne who abandoned him. What he feared most was that day on the cliff, when Melissa said that she was the one who saved him in San Francisco all those years ago. If that was true, then he owed Melissa far too much. Unfortunately, now there was no way to find out. Daniel pressed his face against the urn, as if Melissa were still by his side. A flood of guilt and regret overwhelmed him, and his tears gradually soaked the wooden box. Mel, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you. I'm sorry, I have always wronged you. Please come back to life, even if it means trading my life for yours. Chapter 16. A month passed, and most of Melissa's injuries had healed. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, her parents told her that the fiancé they had arranged for her would be coming. His name was Chandler Hensley, 6'2", handsome with abs, and currently running a company abroad. The Hensley family and the Barton family had once been business partners, and had jokingly arranged a marriage between their children long ago. After Gilbert and Grace settled overseas, they reconnected with the Hensley family, who were interested in forming a marriage alliance and had been waiting for Melissa's response. During her days in the hospital, Melissa received jasmine flowers every day from her so-called fiancé. Perhaps it was because Grace had praised Chandler so many times, or maybe it was his daily concern, but instead of feeling nervous about meeting Chandler, Melissa actually felt a bit of anticipation. She was very curious about what kind of person Chandler would be. A black SUV was parked downstairs at the hospital, its sleek and stylish design catching the eye, and in front of the car stood a tall, slender young man in an outdoor jacket. Judging by his age, he seemed about the same as her, and he looked somewhat familiar. Grace gently nudged Melissa. This is Chandler, that boy. You two should spend some time together these days and build your relationship. On Valentine's Day, you can go get your marriage certificate. Melissa walked over in small steps, looked up at the person in front of her, curved her lips into a smile, nodded, and greeted him, hello. There was a striking black mole on the bridge of Chandler's nose, which, on his already exquisite and stunning features, added a touch of allure. His dark eyes were filled with a smile, as if starlight was scattered within them. He gestured in sign language, clearly well practiced and fluent. It's been a long time, Lissa. Chandler stepped aside and opened the car door, motioning for Melissa to get in. As he moved, a fresh, pleasant scent of soap mixed with a hint of jasmine wafted into the air. Melissa's ears turned red, and she felt a bit awkward and flustered. She turned her head and realized that Gilbert and Grace had taken another car to give her and Chandler some time alone. Melissa braced herself and got into Chandler's car. After she got in, Chandler handed her a tablet. Melissa stared at the tablet in confusion, when suddenly a line of text popped up on the screen. I've modified the car. My speech is automatically recognized and transcribed. You can type on the tablet to chat with me. Melissa's eyes lit up a little. Chandler moved his lips and said something else, and Melissa looked at the tablet to see a new line of text appear. Don't worry about distracting me while I drive. What you type will be read to me by AI, so just chat as usual. It was the first time Melissa had met someone so considerate for her sake. She hesitated for a long time, and finally just typed out an, okay. But the screen kept displaying new text. Don't remember me? When we were kids, we played together. I got your doll dirty and you cried. I took your favorite candy and you cried, and when you saw me get hurt, you cried too. These words stirred Melissa's memories. It seemed there really had been such a little boy in her memories. She could still hear the threatening words in her ears. Lissa, if you cry again, I'll marry you by force and lock you in a room so you can cry every day. No wonder Chandler felt so familiar to her. She remembered everything now. So it was you. You didn't die? The little boy in her memory had suffered from a serious heart condition. One afternoon, she waited for the boy in vain, and only her mother came to tell her that he had gone far away and would never return. Little Melissa had always thought he was dead. Who died? Chandler couldn't help but turn his head to glance at Melissa in the passenger seat, his dark eyes gentle. It was just a sudden heart attack. I was rushed abroad overnight and didn't get to say goodbye to you. How does that mean I died? Melissa touched her nose sheepishly. She had been too young to understand back then and had misunderstood. She had never expected that the fiancé her mother had always wanted her to meet abroad would turn out to be him. Chapter 17. Every day after that, Chandler would make time to come see her. Each time, he would bring a bouquet of jasmine, and hidden within the flowers were always various pieces of jewelry. Melissa was no stranger to luxury. She could tell that the jewelry Chandler gave her was exceptionally valuable. In the past, she would only receive such jewelry from Daniel on special occasions, but now, Chandler brought her new surprises every day. Melissa was both flattered and overwhelmed, and she tried to refuse him. Yet Chandler would show up the next day with the same bouquet as usual. He said, a girl can never have too many accessories, and besides, these are all brands under the Hensley family. I designed them myself. So, what do you think? Lissa, hurry and tell me I'm a genius. Melissa's eyes widened. She could hardly believe that the nearly full cabinet of jewelry was all Chandler's own work. She signed, all the pieces you gave me are your own designs? Chandler curled his lips and raised his brows with a cocky air. Of course. You really are a genius, Melissa said, genuinely admiring him. Chandler's features softened, his sculpted face suddenly drawing close. This time, he didn't use sign language. His soft, thin lips parted slightly as he said, back when I was lovesick, I could draw over a dozen designs in a single day. I kept imagining what you'd look like wearing them. Lissa, you made me wait so long. She couldn't hear what Chandler was saying, but the aura around him was so intense that Melissa instinctively leaned back, swallowing nervously. The more time she spent with Chandler, the more she realized just how incredibly good he was. On the surface, he seemed wild and unrestrained, but inside, he was gentle and attentive. Whenever she went out with him, Melissa never had to worry about a thing. He would prepare everything in advance, cater to her tastes, care about her comfort, and even make sure to bring an umbrella if it looked like rain. Most importantly, he had designed a special voice conversion system just for her, making her feel as if she could truly communicate with him without barriers. In the car, Melissa secretly tapped her screen and saw the text that popped up. She carried the system with her, and it successfully recognized Chandler's words. In her mind, she could almost picture Chandler's lazy tone as he spoke those words, matching the scene from earlier. Melissa pressed her lips together, her heart beating faster. But after the joy faded, an endless anxiety crept in. Before she came, she thought it would be nothing more than a loveless business marriage. She never expected Chandler to be such a good person. With the way she was, how could she ever be worthy of him? Melissa was downcast all day, and that night, Chandler, as usual, drove her home. This time, however, Melissa didn't hurry inside. She opened her phone and typed, Chandler, you deserve someone better. I can go home and tell my parents we should call off the engagement. What's wrong, Lissa? Chandler's eyes lifted at the corners as he reached out to tuck a strand of Melissa's hair behind her ear. Why'd I feel like you're about to cry again? No, it's my fault. Melissa had to admit, she couldn't escape the shadow Daniel had left on her. Every time she woke from a dream in the middle of the night, it was still Daniel's face she saw. From the age of 14 until now, all the years of her awakening youth had been tied to Daniel. She had given Daniel all her purest, most unreserved love. She knew very well that she would never be able to do that again. She felt unworthy of Chandler's kindness. "What's wrong with you? You're wonderful." Melissa bit her lip and took a deep breath. "I've been in love before. I don't mind. And I can't hear. I don't mind." Chandler pressed closer, pinning Melissa against the car door. "On the contrary, I only hate that my heart is so useless. Look at me." Melissa glanced at the words on the screen, then looked up to meet Chandler's eyes. His long index finger rested against Melissa's lips. She froze for a moment, and Chandler's unique presence seemed to envelop her. Their noses touched, and it felt as if he kissed her. It wasn't until Melissa returned to her room that she noticed 4 new words on her screen. "Don't push me away." In the car, Chandler's fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly as he tried to restrain the heat in his body. After working so hard for so long, he was finally seeing results. He dialed a number in America. You can tell him now that Melissa is still alive. Chapter 18. Recently in New York, rumors have been circulating in the circles that Daniel has gone mad. Every night, he would go to a small house in the suburbs and fall asleep holding an urn of ashes. Even after being bitten by venomous snakes and hospitalized several times, he refused to stop. He drank all day and ignored the company, causing the Zane Group's shares to plummet. The chairman of the Zane Group, who not long ago was still in the limelight, had become a deranged vagrant. Bryce couldn't bear to watch any longer and tried to persuade him several times. "Mr. Zane, the dead cannot come back to life. It's been almost 2 months now. It's time to let Ms. Melissa rest in peace. Get out." Daniel clutched the urn tightly. "Mel isn't dead. She's still with me. Mr. Zane, you can't go on like this. Sooner or later, you'll have to give Ms. Melissa's parents an explanation. The Barton family has lost their daughter. If you really feel guilty toward Ms. Melissa, you should take good care of them from now on." That's right, Mel cared deeply about her family. But how was he supposed to tell the elderly couple that Melissa died because of him? He was silent for a long time before speaking. "Let Daphne out of the basement and send her to the hospital for proper treatment. Keep it from them for now. Mr. Zane, you shouldn't keep running away like you did with Ms. Melissa." Daniel unconsciously stroked the wooden box. "Do as I say." He remembered that Grace had a weak heart, and since Daphne at least looked similar to Melissa, he could keep up the pretense a little longer. He couldn't hurt the people Mel cared about most any further. Bryce shook his head and sighed. As soon as Bryce left, Tommy came looking for him. With one hand in his pocket and a mocking smile at the corner of his lips, he said, "I tried to warn you back then, but you wouldn't listen. Now you regret it. What were you doing before? What's the use of saying that now?" Daniel lowered his eyes, his demeanor dejected. "I only regret not seeing Daphne's true colors sooner and wrongly blaming Mel." "Enough." Tommy rolled his eyes. "Melissa isn't dead." "What? My people found the latest information. That night, surveillance cameras caught her. Following the trail, we discovered Melissa picked up her luggage at a hotel and went to the airport." Overjoyed, Daniel trembled uncontrollably, and the urn in his hands crashed to the floor. He rushed forward. "Where is she now?" Tommy staggered as Daniel grabbed him, but he spoke unhurriedly. "It took me a lot of effort. 30% of the shares, will you give them to me?" "Yes, I'll give them to you." Tommy took out a document, and Daniel signed it without even looking. "She's in Sausalito." Daniel left in a hurry. Tommy looked at the document in his hand and sent a message back to Chandler. Upon receiving the message, Chandler curled his lips. "Good. Short the Zane Group as soon as possible and take back everything she gave away. Don't worry." That day, Melissa was in the yard brushing the fur of a cat basking in the sun. Chandler had a shelter dedicated to taking in stray cats. Melissa had visited it with him before. Seeing that she liked them, Chandler had specially sent a few cats over. She hadn't touched these furry little creatures in a long time. In the past, because Daniel didn't like her getting covered in cat hair after petting cats, she had suppressed her urge to keep cats for the past 5 years. The big orange tabby, having soaked up enough sunshine, rolled over comfortably between Melissa's legs, exposing its snow-white belly. Afraid it might fall, Melissa gently circled it with her hands. The soft fur pressed against her palm, and her eyes curved into crescent moons, utterly content. The sunlight poured generously over her hair, as if crowning her with a fluffy halo. Daniel stood in the shade of a tree, his eyes red as he stared at the scene. It was Melissa. She was really alive. Chapter 19. Just as Melissa's gaze was about to sweep in this direction, Daniel quickly hid behind the tree trunk. After receiving news about Melissa, he took a flight that lasted more than 20 hours overnight to get here, looking worn and weary. He knew Melissa liked his appearance, and in his current state, he was not fit to see her. In the evening, after meeting Chandler, Melissa returned home only to find an unexpected guest. In the living room, Melissa immediately spotted Daniel sitting to one side. Over the years, she had grown used to chasing after his figure. Now, even if it was just his back, Melissa still recognized him. She froze at the doorway, her legs feeling as heavy as lead. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably, and a cold sweat broke out along her spine. Her heart ached with an uncontrollable sourness. It wasn't until Gilbert waved to her from inside the room that Melissa, belatedly realizing her odd behavior, forced herself to move toward the living room. Gilbert explained in sign language, "Mr. Zane said he came to visit us." Melissa didn't want to interact with Daniel any more than necessary, so she replied to Gilbert, "Then you all go ahead and keep talking." "Mel," Daniel stood up, "can I talk to you alone?" Melissa instinctively took half a step back, her whole body resisting. She wanted to leave, but when her gaze swept over the unsuspecting Gilbert and Grace on the sofa, her nails dug into her palm and she nodded slightly. Since Daniel had come all the way here, she knew it was time to make things clear with him once and for all. By the roadside, the glaring white streetlight split their shadows apart. Seeing that no one was around, Daniel immediately pulled Melissa into his arms. The joy of regaining what he thought was lost made him unwilling to let go of Melissa. It wasn't until she kicked him that he let go in pain. Melissa said angrily, "Mr. Zane, please show some respect. No matter what happened between us before, there is nothing between us now. Please do not disturb my life anymore." "Mel." Daniel's expression was painful. "Please, let me explain." The Daniel before her had lost a great deal of weight, his cheeks sunken, cheekbones prominent, and the skin around his eyes red. "The person who set fire to the abandoned warehouse that night wasn't me, it was Daphne. I had no idea she would do that. I've already punished her and made her pay for what she did to hurt you before. All these days, I thought you were dead. I was devastated. Now that you're alive, why didn't you tell me or come find me?" Melissa frowned, the surprise she had felt at Daniel's change now turning into irritation. Everything that had happened in the past flashed before her eyes, and Melissa could only find it laughable. It was Daniel who had doubted her again and again, who had never trusted her. It wasn't that she hadn't looked for him, or told him the truth, it was that he had never trusted her. Melissa tried to calm herself and explained patiently, "There is nothing between us. I don't want to dwell on the past anymore. I just want to live my own life. Just pretend I died in that fire and don't come looking for me again." "Mel, are you still angry that I never gave you a proper status?" Daniel seized on the key point. "I told you, the one I love is you. As for Daphne, she has depression, and she once saved me, so I had to go along with her. My marriage certificate with her is fake, the wedding was fake, and all those words about loving her were insincere. The one I truly love is you. Without you, these past days have been torture for me. I always thought you were dead and was filled with guilt and remorse. If I could do it all over again, I would explain everything to you properly. Mel, tomorrow I'll talk to your parents about marriage. We can get married right away, and when we return home, I'll give you the wedding of the century, all right?" Tears slid down Daniel's face to his chin, his eyes pleading and filled with a hint of hope. Chapter 20. There's no need. Melissa's eyes were calm. "If you loved me, what did my ambiguous status over the past 5 years mean? What stands between us is not just Daphne. It used to be that my feelings for you blinded me, but now, I don't like you anymore." Melissa thought she had made herself very clear. She turned to leave, but Daniel grabbed her wrist from behind. "I don't believe you don't like me anymore. It was me who didn't understand my own heart before. Give me a chance, I'll change everything." Melissa's wrist hurt from his grip. She struggled hard, but Daniel only held on tighter. "Daniel, I'm getting married. Please let me go." "Mel, let's not keep misunderstanding each other like before, okay?" Melissa used to like him so much that he simply couldn't believe she would get married. He knew Melissa was just still angry. After all, the hurt she had suffered wasn't something he could make up for in a single day. Being too eager would only backfire. Reluctantly, Daniel let go of Melissa's hand. "I'll make you see my sincerity." As soon as her wrist was freed, Melissa felt a huge sense of relief. Without a trace of hesitation, she ran toward home. Just a few steps from her door, Chandler suddenly appeared from behind a car. Melissa paused in her tracks. Chandler walked straight up, opened the car door with one hand, and with the other arm wrapped around her waist, pulled her into the car. Lissa, don't say anything yet. Chandler hadn't driven his spacious SUV this time. The space was suddenly halved, and the two of them were sitting very close together. Melissa noticed Chandler's gaze was fixed not far away. She followed his line of sight and saw Daniel still standing under the streetlight. Daniel stayed there for nearly 10 minutes before finally turning to leave. A display screen was attached to the back of the front seat, and Melissa saw another line of text pop up on it. So that's your ex? He looks a bit old. Melissa suddenly realized that she and Chandler were still pressed close together. She pursed her lips, quietly straightened up, and tapped on the keyboard. Why are you still here? Chandler rested his hand on the screen, leaned in, and his bright black eyes stared intently at Melissa. Oh, just like him, I'm waiting for my wife to come home. But I think I can last longer than he can. You're lying to me. Even the car that brought her home wasn't the same one. All right, I got a message from Mrs. Barton halfway here. After all, he's a love rival, and I got jealous and came back to keep an eye on things. Chandler brushed it off with a joke, then typed seriously on the screen. So, Lissa, are you willing to tell me about you and him now? I really want to know, what did he have that I didn't? Melissa turned her head and met Chandler's inquisitive and innocent gaze. She thought that she really should be honest about everything, so Chandler would give up on her. Time passed little by little. Even though Chandler had already investigated almost everything about Melissa, he still listened intently as she told her story. Melissa thought she would feel sad, but throughout the whole process, she remained as calm as if she were telling someone else's story. Lissa, you just loved the wrong person. Other than that, you didn't do anything wrong. She saw the last line of text pop up on the screen. Melissa's nose tingled with emotion. She turned her head, just as a tear slid from the corner of Chandler's eye and landed on her knee. Melissa was suddenly at a loss. But if we become lovers, it wouldn't be good for you. Melissa understood that sense of disparity. She knew she could never treat Chandler as well as she had treated Daniel. Chandler recovered his composure quickly. That tear from earlier seemed almost like Melissa's imagination. He smiled, then tapped Melissa on the head with his finger. The good one has always been you, not just because his name is Daniel. If it were someone else who liked him, they wouldn't have done the foolish things you did. Chandler somehow produced a diamond ring. You're too wonderful, so I have to hurry up and trick you into coming home with me. Chapter 21. Melissa lay on the bed, raising her hand to look at the ring on her ring finger, which felt especially unreal. Chandler had slipped the ring onto her finger just like a relative stuffing a gift into your hands at Christmas. Her parents were also overjoyed to learn that the ring was from Chandler, and immediately picked out a few perfect days. It was decided they would get married next week, and after the wedding, they would prepare for the ceremony. Melissa's lips curled up unconsciously, and Chandler's face appeared in her mind. No one knew that when she was young, while playing with Chandler, she had promised him she would marry him one day. She had always remembered. At the time, it was just childish talk, and she never expected that after all these twists and turns, it would actually come true. Early the next morning, Chandler arrived at her house, this time bringing his parents along. They were all familiar faces from her memories. After greeting everyone, Melissa was arranged to sit next to Chandler. Today, the Hensley family had come to formally propose marriage. She hadn't expected Chandler to act so quickly. Moreover, the gifts they brought seemed to have been prepared months in advance, maybe even longer. Melissa sat obediently, noticing that every face was filled with satisfied, joyful smiles. The device Chandler had specially prepared for her allowed her to know everything that was being said. She was no longer, as before, an outsider who couldn't hear or participate. A hand brushed against hers, which was resting on the sofa. The warm touch made her instinctively look at the person beside her. Chandler's eyes were smiling as he lifted his chin slightly, signaling Melissa to look at the doorway. At some point, someone else had appeared at the door. Daniel stood there, holding a gift box in each hand, looking like an awkward outsider as he gazed at the cheerful scene inside the room. Grace was not very fond of Daniel, but Gilbert stood up with a smile and said, "Hey, Mr. Zane, you're here again. Just in time to have some wedding candy." Daniel entered with his gifts and silently placed them beside the pile of boxes that had formed a small mountain. Gilbert went over to greet him, saying, "You didn't have to bring gifts just because you came." Daniel's gaze swept over everyone, lingering a few seconds longer on Melissa and Chandler sitting together, before he tentatively asked, "Mr. Barton, what's going on here?" "Oh, it's about Mel. We're discussing her marriage. The wedding will probably be next month. If you're free, Mr. Zane, you must come." Marriage? Daniel's posture faltered, and he instinctively objected. No, Mel can't get married. She doesn't even like anyone. An arranged marriage will ruin her life. Daniel's words instantly froze the warm atmosphere in the living room. The coldest expressions belonged to Chandler's parents. Only Chandler was still smiling, as if watching a show. Chandler's mother questioned him in front of everyone. Mel has no objections, so who are you to say these things? Daniel opened his mouth, unable to describe his relationship with Melissa. Sorry, I've been taking care of Mel for the past 5 years, so I know her personality well. She doesn't like interacting with strangers. My son was engaged to Mel when they were children. They've grown up together. How are they strangers? Daniel glanced at Melissa, only to see her sitting close to the unfamiliar man beside her, not even looking at him. Daniel's fingers curled, and his heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. How could it be? Not long ago, Melissa had relied on and liked him so much. How could she suddenly be marrying someone else? Mr. Zane, what brings you here today? Hearing this, Daniel looked at Gilbert. The scene before him was truly awkward, but Daniel knew he had to seize the opportunity. He clenched his jaw and spoke solemnly. Mr. Barton, I am in love with Mel and wish to marry her. Chapter 22. Gilbert looked troubled. When Melissa saw the message on the screen proposing marriage, she shot to her feet. Chandler hooked her fingers with his, gesturing in sign language with one hand. I'll go with you. Melissa hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Chandler stood up as well, naturally intertwining his fingers with hers. Melissa glanced down but did not pull her hand away. As the two walked over, Daniel immediately noticed their entwined hands and the diamond ring on Melissa's ring finger. He was desperate to get an answer from Melissa. Mel, did they threaten you? You don't like him, do you? I was just telling Mr. Barton about us getting married. As long as you're willing, I can take you away. Chandler let go of Melissa's hand in advance. I won't go with you. Afraid Daniel wouldn't understand, Melissa deliberately slowed her signing. Seeing Melissa's response, Chandler curled his lips into a smile. When he looked at Daniel, his eyes were openly provocative. See? She won't go with you. Mr. Zane, if we're talking about who came first, you're behind me. If we're talking about Melissa's choice, she picked me. Some people are not only old but also arrogant. I really don't know where your confidence comes from. There were many people present, so although Daniel wanted to lose his temper, he immediately suppressed it. He put on his usual gentlemanly smile, said goodbye to Gilbert, and left. For the next few days, Melissa didn't see Daniel again. She was somewhat relieved that Daniel hadn't revealed much, afraid that Grace and the others would find out about her past with him. In the blink of an eye, Valentine's Day was approaching. It was the day she and Chandler were supposed to go to City Hall to get married. But for some reason, Chandler had suddenly become very busy these past 2 days. Melissa hadn't seen him for 2 days in a row. Tomorrow was Valentine's Day. Melissa touched the ring on her finger, feeling a bit lost. It seemed she shouldn't always pin her feelings on someone else. Otherwise, she would end up with nothing again, just like before. Melissa was absent-mindedly scrolling through her phone when she suddenly came across a piece of American news about the Zane Group. Daniel's company had gone bankrupt. Melissa's eyes widened as she checked several times to make sure it was indeed Daniel's company. In the interview video, Daniel looked thinner, with a few strands of white hair and a weary expression. How strange. Not long ago, under Daniel's leadership, the Zane Group was thriving. Yet in just over a month, it had gone bankrupt. Melissa searched for related news, and after understanding the whole story, she found it reasonable. But she hadn't expected that she would be the one to make the former workaholic neglect his career. During her time abroad, Daniel in America had thought she was dead. The outside world said that it was the death of his beloved that caused Daniel's downfall. Melissa pressed her lips together. She couldn't understand what Daniel was trying to do. It was Daphne who had registered the marriage with him. She had seen the photo of their marriage certificate on Daphne's Instagram. There was no mistake. Daniel appeared so devoted after her death, but wasn't everything she had suffered because of him? The Zane family's bankruptcy. Melissa could only think that Daniel deserved it. Just as she was thinking this, a beam of light shone outside the window. Melissa got out of bed and walked to the window. The very person she had just seen in the video appeared in her line of sight. Daniel turned off his flashlight. He was wearing a white shirt just like when they first met, and under the streetlight, he signed, "I want to talk to you again." Melissa instinctively wanted to pull the curtains closed. But Daniel pressed his hands together devoutly and placed them over his chest. "Please, Mel, I won't do anything to you. I just want to see you one more time and talk to you." Chapter 23. Melissa stood in front of Daniel. What do you want to say? Daniel hung his head, looking as if he had been drinking. His arm lifted weakly. Mel, you're all I have left. I really like you. It's me who never dared to face my own feelings. I was too afraid of gossip, too scared of the unexpected that doesn't fit into moral standards. The Zane family was a family of social elites. Daniel had been taught self-restraint and propriety since childhood. During the time I was with you, I looked at your face, so similar to Daphne's, and foolishly thought I was drawn to you because of that resemblance. But later I realized I never had any extra feelings for Daphne. Only you could stir my desire. It's my fault. I thought, after my parents passed away, I had learned how to stand on my own and handle everything. I never expected that in the end, I'd make you so sad you'd leave me. Daniel squatted down, the streetlight reflecting in his tear-filled eyes, making him look rather pitiful. He knelt on one knee and took out the wedding ring he had prepared from his pocket. Can you let me love you again? Don't be with him. I know you've liked me for so many years. Our past shouldn't be let go so easily. Melissa lifted her head, blinking away tears that shouldn't have existed. Her years of devotion had finally been answered. Unfortunately, it came too late. Daniel, I don't need love that arrives too late. Daniel struggled to adjust his expression for a long moment, finally forcing out a smile uglier than crying. It's fine. You saved me on the rooftop back then, and now that the Zane family is bankrupt, it's my own fault. This life that should have ended long ago ought to be returned to you. What do you mean? Melissa's expression grew serious. Are you threatening me just because I don't want to be with you? I'm not. Daniel staggered to his feet. It has nothing to do with you. Back then, I only survived a few more years thanks to your help. It's just that I'm ending my life a few years later than I would have. Daniel's thoughts drifted far away, and in a daze, he returned to 5 years ago, to the scene where he watched his parents die before his eyes. Melissa felt a wave of frustration in her chest. She was both angry and anxious, but in this situation, she was completely helpless against Daniel. She couldn't truly watch Daniel die, nor was she willing to agree to be with him under coercion. As she wavered, a pair of hands landed on her shoulders. The familiar scent of jasmine invaded her senses. Melissa glanced sideways. Chandler, wearing a lazy smile, raised his eyebrows at her. Leave it to me. Chandler comfortingly patted Melissa's shoulder. His soft, pink lips moved as he said something to Daniel. When she came back to herself and looked at Daniel's reaction, he had already turned mechanically, gradually merging into the darkness. What did you say to him? Chandler remained mysterious. Nothing much. At least tonight, he won't try to kill himself. Chandler gripped Melissa's shoulders and turned her to face him. Lissa, your taste in people before wasn't great. Always so dramatic, like they'd swallowed a fly. Disgusting. Next time you meet someone like that, just run far away. He almost took over your life, but luckily I came back in time. So where have you been these past 2 days? After just 2 days without seeing Chandler, Melissa realized she was already not used to his absence. Did you miss me? Melissa guiltily looked away, her cheeks tinged with red. Chandler couldn't help but laugh out loud, his dark eyes hiding countless mischief. He only hoped that when Melissa discovered his true nature, she wouldn't hate him. He didn't continue teasing Melissa, but explained, I've been preparing a wedding gift these past 2 days. I'll tell you after we get married tomorrow. Chapter 24. Many people get married on Valentine's Day. Under the bright sun, Melissa clutched the marriage certificate in her hand and walked out of City Hall with Chandler, surrounded by the well wishes of those around them. The marriage certificate that once seemed so out of reach was now resting tangibly in her palm. Back then, it must have been just as easy for Daniel and Daphne to get married. Chandler, growing more adept, took Melissa's hand. Let's go. I want to give you the wedding gift I prepared for you. Melissa sat in Chandler's car, and before she could react, they had already arrived at the hospital. At the hospital entrance, both Gilbert and Grace were waiting. What are you all doing? Treatment, to help you regain your hearing. Do you trust me? Melissa waved her hands repeatedly. It's impossible. I've tried so many methods already. Her constitution was special, and after 5 years, she had finally waited for a pair of matching cochlear implants, only for them to be destroyed by Daphne. Trust me, just give it a try. Dad said you're afraid of pain, so we'll all be waiting outside with you. Chandler insisted, and Melissa couldn't bear to refuse his kindness. Melissa remained calm and composed through every step of the examination. She had lost count of how many times she had gone through such procedures. It was Chandler, on the other hand, who was visibly nervous. As she was wheeled into the operating room, she even saw Chandler's eyes turn red. It turned out that even a family not related by blood could accompany her to the hospital for surgery. But in the past 5 years, Daniel had never accompanied her. When she woke up again, the first thing Melissa saw was not the doctor, but Chandler's enlarged face. Concern overflowed in his eyes. "You're finally awake, Lissa. How do you feel? Does it still hurt?" Melissa shook her head. As soon as she turned her head halfway, the pain from the wound instantly brought her back to full awareness. Just now, it seemed she had heard Chandler's voice. Melissa's eyes widened. I can hear?" She could even hear her own voice. Chandler nodded, the corners of his eyes reddened, his voice hoarse. "You can finally hear, Lissa." Melissa, shocked, felt her eyes sting with tears. "Why are you crying?" Chandler wiped away Melissa's tears. "I'm not telling you." "All right, now for your second wedding gift." Chandler picked up a document from the side and handed it to Melissa. Inside are all the shares of the Barton family, along with 5 years of interest. The Barton family business should return to your hands. Melissa flipped through the documents, utterly shocked. She wasn't foolish, she immediately connected it to the news of the Zane family's bankruptcy. So the matter with the Zane family was Chandler's doing? Looking at the assets listed in the documents, Melissa couldn't believe that Chandler, who had been abroad for so many years, was capable of such things. Noticing the doubt on Melissa's face, Chandler chuckled softly and explained, "I have connections in America. He wronged you first, so of course, what belongs to you must be taken back." "Mel, do you think I'm a bad person for doing this? Do you not want to be with me?" Melissa shook her head. "No, thank you so much." The Barton family business was the hard work of Gilbert and Grace. Back then, in her naivety, she had given it all to Daniel. She had thought about taking it back, but she didn't have the ability, nor did she dare tell Gilbert. After all, if she had to explain, she was afraid she wouldn't be able to hide the fact that she had willingly been a stand-in by Daniel's side. If they found out, they would definitely be furious. Hearing Melissa's answer, Chandler visibly breathed a sigh of relief. In order to get close to Melissa, Chandler had planned every step carefully, and even dared to give her these things only after they were married. Now, Melissa would have to wait a month before she could file for divorce. There's a third gift, which is also good news. It's about Daphne. After Daniel learned the truth about how she hurt you, he tormented her and sent her to prison. She was sentenced to life, so you'll never see her again. Melissa pursed her lips. Do Mom and Dad know? After all, Daphne was her sister. Even though Daphne had broken with the family years ago, blood was still thicker than water. They know. Chandler raised his hand and tapped Melissa's nose. They know a lot of things. Seeing the meaningful look on Chandler's face, Melissa's heart skipped a beat. She watched as Chandler stood up and opened the door to the hospital room. Outside, Gilbert and Grace had been waiting all along. Melissa's anxious heart sank. Thinking of the foolish things she had done, she guiltily averted her gaze. Dad, Mom. Chapter 25. Mom, Dad, then you two talk to Mel. Chandler switched his words with practiced ease. With a smile lingering on his lips, he left under Melissa's pleading gaze, closing the door tightly behind him. Inside the hospital room, Melissa carefully swallowed, not daring to make a sound. Gilbert spoke first. Silly child, your mom and I have been through all this before. Did you really think we couldn't see what you were up to when you took shares from the Barton family back then? Grace said, exactly. Of all the people to fall for, you just had to choose Daniel. That boy may look decent and refined, but he was your sister's fiancé before. Back then, we thought he was a gentleman, deeply in love with your sister. We figured you'd give up soon enough, but who knew you'd be so hopeless? And Daniel too, he never appreciated how wonderful our Mel is, and treated you so badly. Melissa spoke up weakly. How do you know everything? Gilbert snorted, we're not fools. A few days ago, we called Daniel to ask about you, but Daph answered the phone. She said you were dead, so we started to suspect something. We asked Chandler to help us investigate, and he handled everything after that. You suffered so much, went through so much, and never told your parents. Melissa endured Gilbert and Grace's scolding for over an hour. After they left, Melissa lay listlessly on the hospital bed, feeling for the first time that maybe it would be better if she couldn't hear. But this feeling was still much better than before. Melissa gazed out the window, not noticing someone standing at the door of the hospital room. Daniel stood there, quietly watching the person lying on the bed. 1,000 words were stuck in his throat. He hadn't expected it. The person who saved him in San Francisco all those years ago was Melissa. Even though he had suspected it before, when Chandler confirmed the news, he truly didn't know how to face Melissa. He had repaid the wrong debt, loved the wrong girl from his memories. And because of that so-called gratitude, he ignored his feelings for Melissa and did so many wrong things to her. All these years, what had he done to Melissa? Coldness, neglect, enjoying her affection and her youth. After Daphne returned, he hid things from her, married Daphne behind her back. He didn't trust her, punished her with the things she feared most, including those 99 slaps and the venomous snake he had someone put in. It was he who personally pushed the loving, wonderful Melissa further and further away. All these years, he had been blind and foolish, never even seriously investigating the truth of the past. When he learned that Melissa had lost her hearing for so many years because she saved him, he wished he could stab himself to death. Fortunately, his cochlear implant was compatible with Melissa's. Otherwise, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. On the hospital bed, Melissa seemed to see something, and a smile appeared at the corner of her lips. The scene was so pure and beautiful that Daniel almost couldn't stop himself from going in, but a hand gripped his shoulder. "Have you seen enough?" Chandler stared at him with a half-smile. "If you have, then get lost. Don't ever show up in front of her again." After being discharged, everything in Melissa's life seemed to return to normal. Her wedding with Chandler was set for October. During the following days, Chandler put aside his work and went with Melissa to all the places she had always wanted to visit, taking wedding photos. Those days were so wonderful and happy that Melissa almost forgot about Daniel entirely. Until the day she was trying on her wedding dress in a shop, Daniel's familiar face appeared once again. Daniel's gaze swept seriously over Melissa in her wedding dress. "You look beautiful. What are you doing here?" Chapter 26. Melissa looked at him calmly, while she caught a sight of the hearing aid on Daniel's ear. "I'm here to apologize to you." "There's no need." Daniel took a step forward and knelt straight down on the ground. "I'm sorry, Mel. I didn't know it was you who saved me in San Francisco all those years ago. I mistakenly thought Daphne was my savior. I've been looking for you for a while now, and today I finally managed to avoid Chandler and see you. Mel, I know I was wrong. Back in San Francisco, I fell in love with you at first sight, but after the car accident you disappeared. Later, Daphne found me first, which led me to mistake her for you. You can hit me, yell at me, do anything you want, as long as you're willing to forgive me. It's all in the past." She had long since stopped liking Daniel. There was no question of forgiveness between them. Daniel couldn't accept such a calm Melissa. These days, he had been nearly driven mad by torment. "I can't let it go." Daniel's eyes reddened as he shuffled on his knees to Melissa's feet, grabbing the hem of her dress and begging humbly, "Mel, please come back. Don't marry him. Let's be together again. I can't let you go. Not a day goes by that I don't regret it. Mel, just say the word and we can leave right now." "Let go." Melissa frowned. "Daniel, I'm already married. And how many times do I have to tell you? I don't love you anymore." She didn't give Daniel another chance to pester her and called out for Chandler. Daniel was thrown out by the bodyguards. "Are you all right?" Chandler checked Melissa from head to toe. "That bastard actually tried to steal you from me." "I'm fine." Melissa's eyes curved with a smile as she took the initiative to wrap her arms around Chandler's neck, tiptoeing to kiss him. "He can't take me away. I only love you." Outside the window, the yellowing plane tree leaves drifted down with the wind. Daniel lay on the ground, looking through the window at the scene inside. It seemed Melissa really didn't love him anymore. On the wedding day, Melissa, dressed in a pure white gown, was led step by step toward Chandler by Gilbert. A happy smile lingered in her eyes as she stood beside Chandler. The priest was reciting the vows. Just as Melissa was about to say, "I do," a sharp, piercing buzzing sound echoed throughout the wedding hall. Daniel appeared out of nowhere, holding a microphone in his hand. "You can't be with him. Mel, Chandler is not a good man." Chandler instinctively shielded Melissa and called out, "Security. Mel, you know Tommy, he's my friend, but he's actually Chandler's man. They worked together to shorten my company, and during the time you were gone, they hid news about you from me. Daphne was brought back to the country with his help. He knew you were being mistreated at my place but did nothing. He deliberately wanted you to give up on me." Daniel was surrounded by security. Even after the microphone was taken from him, he still shouted unwillingly, "Mel, don't marry him." Chandler stood frozen in place, at a loss, instinctively looking to see Melissa's reaction. "Mel, I didn't just stand by and do nothing. I couldn't get your news right away, I didn't." "Wait a moment." Melissa stopped the security guards who were about to take Daniel away. She lifted her dress and stepped down from the stage, walking up to Daniel. There was a glimmer of hope in Daniel's eyes. Mel, everything I said is true. He's the one who deliberately drove a wedge between us. Smack. A crisp slap made Daniel's head turn to the side. There is nothing between us. I left you because I finally saw you for who you are. Daniel, if you don't want everyone to know about the things you've done, then don't show up again. Who I marry is my choice. Chandler is 1,000 times better than you. After Daniel was taken away, the wedding proceeded as usual. Back home, Chandler waited anxiously for a long time but didn't see Melissa get angry. He asked in confusion, "You don't blame me?" "I don't." Melissa smiled with relief. "It was me who refused to see him for who he was all along." After leaving Daniel, she lived very well. Her parents were by her side, the Barton family business needed her management, and she had her own goals and pursuits. Most importantly, she knew Chandler truly loved her. Every day, she felt more fulfilled and happier than before. In winter, heavy snow fell across the city. Melissa met Bryce outside the cafe. "Ms. Melissa, Mr. Zane has passed away. This is the letter he asked me to give you." "No need, just throw it away." Amidst the bustling crowd, a letter lay quietly in the trash can. The end. And that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading, and keep the drama on the page.